In this week's short video, we're going to be giving you tips for first-time visitors to the island. Now, obviously this is aimed at people who haven't been here before, but if you've only visited occasionally, I'm sure there will be one or two things in this that will be useful to you that you perhaps didn't know before. It's only going to be a short video, but we've got loads of stuff to cover and we'll be talking about getting to and from the airport, currency here, driving on the roads here, duty free, the 3 resorts on the island, the weather, tipping, excursions, tap water, milk, Wi-Fi, how child-friendly we are, shopping on the island, and finally we'll be talking about medical issues, so stick to the end to hear all of that information over the next few minutes. So let's kick off by talking about getting from and back to the airport. So from the airport to your accommodation and then back at the end of it. Now, if you've booked a package holiday with, for example, Jet2 Holidays, then you probably have a transfer included and you don't need to worry too much about it. If you're self-catering, you've booked private accommodation here, you will need a means to get to and from the airport. And basically you have 3 options. The first is to grab a taxi. A taxi to Puerto del Carmen or Costa Teguise is going to cost you somewhere in the region of 20 to 25 euros. A taxi to Playa Blanca is going to be quite a bit more expensive, around 47 euros each way. Option 2 is to use the public bus service, and the bus service here has a really good website which is in English, intercitybuslanzarote.com. Just search for that and you'll find it, and you can see all the lines there and the prices and the times and schedules. And the third option is to hire a car. This is the one I would take if I was visiting Lanzarote, because I like to be independent. I like to be able to travel around any destination I'm in. Car hire is cheap here. If you deal with the reputable companies, there will be no including us, of course, there will be no hidden surprises, and you'll be picking your car up from the airport and dropping it back at the airport. So there aren't shuttle buses in the case of the main companies that are based at the airport. So those are your options getting to and from your accommodation. Now let's talk about currency. The currency here, of course, is the euro. A euro is divided into 100 centimos. So that's abbreviated, of course, as cents. So you might see something that costs 45 cents. The notes come in denominations of 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 and even 500 euro. I would recommend not bringing 200 and 500 euro notes because they are a nightmare to get changed. Because most people pay by card these days, shops and offices and restaurants and so on tend not to have a ton of change, so I would avoid those. If you do end up with them in your currency, pop into a bank and change them for more usable notes. Now driving, if you've hired a car and you're coming to the island for the first time, you may be slightly nervous about it, particularly if you drive in a country where the cars are right-hand drive. Obviously our cars are left-hand drive, but the good news is that the roads here are excellent. The surfaces are good, there isn't a lot of traffic around, the signage is very good, and you really won't have a problem adapting to driving sitting on the other side of the car. One or two things can feel a little odd to you the first time you drive a left-hand drive car. One is that the mirror will be in the wrong place, so your internal mirror, you'll be looking in the wrong direction for it. And the other one is that the gear lever will be on the wrong side. So if you're used to driving right-hand drive cars, you'll be used to changing gear with your left hand. Here you change gear with your right hand. You can easily solve that problem by choosing an automatic, and there are loads of automatic hire cars available here. The only other thing that can feel particularly odd on the island is roundabouts, because of course we go around them the other way. But again, it soon becomes second nature to you, and all you have to do is to make sure you follow other cars onto it and follow what they're doing. The rule here is that when you're exiting the roundabout, you must be in the outside lane, which is the equivalent to the near side lane on a dual carriageway. So you'll find a lot of people go all the way around the roundabout, even if they're turning left, in the outside lane. Now, Lanzarote is duty-free, and our equivalent to VAT is called IGIC, I-G-I-C, and it's only 7%. So that means that there are some real bargains to be had on the island, particularly if you're talking about alcohol, cigarettes and tobacco, the type of things that carry a high duty. So look out for opportunities to save money if you buy any of those things. And of course, perfumes are also included within that whole duty-free thing. You'll find in the resort areas there are electrical shops which sell all kinds of electrical equipment, you know, from cameras to tablets to mobile phones and things like that. Just a word of warning here, some of them are, I think it's fair to say, slightly dodgy. I've heard lots of rumours about you know, people being sold old stock stuff, so they think they're buying the latest iPad, for example, when in fact it's a 2-year-old model. My rule of thumb for those kind of shops is, first of all, research what you want online and check the price of it online. And then when you're in the shop, you can ask all the right questions about what model it is and what year it's from and so on. The second thing, second piece of advice I'd give you with the electrical shops is, if it seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. Walk away. Now again, if you're a first-time visitor, you may not know this, but Lanzarote has 3 tourist resorts. The first and original is called Puerto del Carmen, and it's kind of central on the island, but of course on the coast. The second newest resort is Costa Teguise, which is a man-made resort further north on the island. And the third is Playa Blanca, which is right down in the south of the island, facing or looking across to the island of Fuerteventura. All 3 resorts have their own pros and cons, and if you look at our website, lanzaroteinformation.co.uk, we'll explain the difference on there to you. But I would also mention that it's worth getting out into other areas of the island, because the 3 tourist resorts are very nice, and obviously they are designed for tourists. But it's well worth visiting Arrecife, the capital, because you get the feel for a nice sort of compact, interesting Spanish city. And of course into the rural areas of the island, because there are some absolutely stunningly beautiful places to go and find. Now let's talk about the weather here. And the weather in Lanzarote, as with the other Canary Islands, truly is spectacular. Let's talk first about the winter. The winter is probably like your very best summer day in Northern Europe. So we're talking temperatures in the mid-20s, very little rain, extremely light winds and beautiful blue skies. The summers are significantly hotter, as you would expect, and they're also windier because we're in the trade wind zones. And bear in mind that throughout the year here, the UV component of the sunshine is much, much higher than you may be used to. And that combination of high UV and a bit of wind in the summer is an absolute recipe for sunburn. So make sure you use good quality cream and reapply it regularly. People often ask about tipping. Tipping is not expected here, but it is received very gratefully. So, you know, unlike in America where your server may give you a hard time if you choose not to leave a tip, nobody here expects one. But if you have good service, I would advise you to leave a tip. We typically will leave about 10% in a restaurant, if the service has been good. Also, if you're just popping into a bar or a cafeteria, bear in mind you pretty much always have table service here. For a coffee or a beer, we tend to leave the loose change, the shrapnel if you like. And we do the same in taxis. So if the taxi fare is, I don't know, 29 euros, we'll give them 30 euros and tell them to keep the change. You can tip the servers in petrol stations. We tend to do that, you know, every 3rd or 4th fill up. What about excursions? There is so much you can do here. The list is pretty much endless. You can hire a private catamaran, you can go onto a public catamaran, you can get ferries across to Fuerteventura and to La Graciosa in the north of the island. There are go-kart tracks, there are simulators, there's an open-air cinema, and then of course we have the 7 official attractions of the island, many of which are related to or were designed by Cesar Manrique. Just go to lanzaroteinformation.co.uk, click the excursions button and you'll see a list as long as your arm, but pretty much most things you can think of you can do here. Another thing people often ask me about is tap water, and all the water we have on this island, it comes from the desalination plant, so it's desalinated seawater. It's perfectly safe to drink. However, most properties here store their water in aljibes or wells, and whilst the water that comes directly from the desalination plant is perfectly drinkable, if it's been stored in an aljibe for some time, it may be a bit grubby and a bit dusty. And the bottom line is it doesn't taste great because it's desalinated. So the reality is pretty much everyone here either drinks bottled water or they have a filter tap in their house that provides filtered water from tap. And over in that direction, because I'm in the kitchen today, we have our water filter tap. In the supermarkets, you will find 5 litre, 8 litre and small bottles of water in plastic bottles readily available and super cheap. So my advice would be to use bottled water for drinking, but tap water is fine for the kettle and boiling eggs and cooking and so on. And while we're talking about water, we should mention milk. We don't have cows on the island, so fresh milk is imported and tends to have a very short shelf life. So the reality is all of us who live here tend to drink the long life milk. I know if you're used to drinking fresh milk, at first the long life milk tastes a bit strange. And I've gone completely the other way now. I'm so used to the long life milk that when I drink fresh milk, it tastes very strange to me. So you will get used to it within a couple of days. Wi-Fi and 4 and 5G, the island is really up to speed technologically. Almost everywhere here has high-speed fibre internet. At our house, which is in a very small village in the north of Lanzarote, we have 600 megabytes up, 600 megabytes down fibre internet. And pretty much everywhere you go on the island now, you will find at worst 4G and more likely than not 5G. So you really don't need to worry about staying in touch with friends, family and work when you're here. Is the island child friendly? Yes, it is, very much so. With the exception of a few adult only hotels, pretty much everywhere you go on the island is happy to see children. And the Spanish are very family orientated. So, you know, it's almost impossible to find a bar or a restaurant or a cafeteria anywhere that says children aren't allowed. They're very much encouraged, and you'll find that the staff spend a lot of time talking to the children and engaging with them as well. And what about shopping? Obviously, this is important if you're self-catering. What you will find in each of the 3 resorts, remember they're Puerto del Carmen, Playa Blanca and Costa Teguise, is small tourist-style supermarkets. And they could be a Ipadino Express, for example. And they tend to have big booze counters because a lot of people go in there to buy their alcohol. They don't tend to have meat counters, but they've got, you know, packaged foods and processed foods and all of the stuff that you need to survive. But you do pay a premium for the ones in the resort areas. So if you are self-catering and you're planning to do a bit of cooking, I would advise going to one of the main supermarkets, which are out of the resorts. They tend to be in Arrecife or Playa Honda, and you'll find Mercadona, Lidl, Eurospar and Aldi, for example. And finally, I promised to talk about medical issues. And there are 2 things I would say on this first of all. The first is that you absolutely need to get medical insurance, and I'll explain why in a moment. And the second is, if you're entitled to it, you should bring your EHIC card if you're in an EU country, or your GHIC card if you're coming from the United Kingdom, because we have reciprocal health agreements, obviously with the rest of the EU, but also with the United Kingdom. But bear one thing in mind, the EHIC and the GHIC is for emergency medical treatment only. So if you have a car accident, you'll be treated, it will all be sorted out. If you have a heart attack, you will be treated and stabilised. But when you go beyond that emergency medical treatment, which for example, if you're diagnosed as needing stents in your heart, your EHIC or your GHIC card will not you for that. And that's the reason we recommend everybody coming to the island or going anywhere on holiday, it's common sense, isn't it, should have private medical cover as well. The pharmacies here are of a different level to many pharmacies in around the world. They're really your first port of call if you have a sort of minor medical issue. So, for example, if you need antihistamines, if you need eardrops because you've got a blocked ear, you can go to the pharmacy, explain what the symptoms are, and they will sell you the product that you need. If you do have something that requires treatment from a doctor, I would recommend you go to the nearest Centro Salud, and there is one in each of the 3 resorts that you can go to with your EHIT card and GHIT card and your passport, and they will look after you at that point. Obviously, if you have something major, call an ambulance on 112 and they will come and pick you up and take you to Arrecife General Hospital. So there you go for first-time visitors. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please give us a like. If I haven't answered a question you had in your head when you started watching this, leave a comment below. I read all of the comments on here and I will answer it for you. Thanks so much for watching, and bye for now.